Welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I am super excited to be doing this back-to-back comparison of two great 1980s superbikes. The first bike up here is Suzuki's 1983 GS1100E. In 1983, Suzuki won its third Best Superbike Award in Cycle World's 10 Best Awards. The GS1100E featured a large, air-cooled 16-valve motor. Performance-wise, on a good day with a good rider, in the quarter mile, the GS1100E could clock off an 11-second flat time at about 120 miles an hour. So it was a very quick bike. It was among the quickest bikes in the world at the time of its production. But the GS1100E wasn't just quick. It also handled very well. It was a very capable all-around motorcycle. Even though Suzuki produced motorcycles that were technically more sporting, they were still based on the GS1100E frame and motor. I'm talking about Suzuki's Katana 1100 and their GS1100ES. The E model is the one that won the 10 Best Award because it had more all-around versatility than those other two models did. The GS1100E was designed in the typical UJM format. It is simply a motorcycle. It's got the wheels, it's got the engine, it's got a minimal amount of body work, and it's got a big round headlight. In 1983, on the GS1100E, Suzuki featured the blacked out motor with the black chrome exhaust. To me, this is the best looking of the GS1100E series. I really like the styling on this bike. And for many people, the GS1100E is the pinnacle of the air-cooled big bore UJM. And that brings us to Yamaha's mighty 1986 FJ1200. The FJ1200 is based very heavily on Yamaha's own FJ1100 that debuted in 1984. And in 1984, the face of the superbike changed. It changed from being a standard style motorcycle into being more of what we think of today as a big bore sport bike. Performance-wise, the FJ1100 and the FJ1200 could also run right around 11 seconds flat in the quarter mile at right around 120 miles an hour, and even a little bit better than that. On paper, these bikes are very similar in a lot of aspects, but there are some major differences between these two bikes, and we'll talk about those as we go through them from front to back. Starting at the front wheel, the Suzuki has a big 19-inch front wheel. It also has dual disc brakes, and those are acted on by single piston calipers. It also has an anti-dive system on the front. It features air assist front forks, and you could increase the pressure to increase your spring preload and your damping in the front forks. Looking at the Yamaha, the FJ1200 features a 16-inch front wheel. It also features automotive-style ventilated rotors for the disc brakes and adjustable anti-dive on the front suspension, and the brakes are actually dual piston calipers. The Yamaha suspension also features spring preload and rebound adjustment on the front forks. Frame-wise, the Suzuki features a steel tube frame. It's a backbone type frame, while the Yamaha uses a square section steel tube perimeter frame that actually goes out and around the engine. And this was kind of all the rage in the mid-80s. Engine-wise, both of these bikes feature large, air-cooled, 16-valve four-cylinder motors. In the case of the FJ1200, they actually put a large oil cooler on the FJ as well to help keep the engine temps down. Each of these bikes has a 5-speed transmission, and the transmissions in each of these bikes really shift nicely. One difference between the bikes is that the Yamaha features a hydraulic clutch, while the Suzuki is a traditional cable type clutch. Out back, both bikes feature aluminum box section swing arms. The Suzuki features the conventional dual shocks in the rear, and those are adjustable for spring preload and rebound damping. Out back, the Yamaha features a single shock linkage type rear suspension, and that is adjustable for spring preload and rebound damping as well. In the seating department, both of these bikes feature large, wide, all-day comfortable seats. Both of these bikes are capable mileage eaters. Looking at the control layout, the Suzuki features the traditional handlebar. The stock bar on this bike had me sitting very upright, and it really wasn't comfortable at speed, and so I put a little bit lower bar on the Suzuki here, and it gives me better control. The Yamaha features a clip-on style handlebar. Those are set about 4 inches above the top triple clamp, so it does give you a lean into the bar. It's more of a sport touring riding position. One obvious difference between these two bikes is the full fairing of the Yamaha. I love the color scheme of the 86 FJ1200. I think it's such a pretty bike. and that fairing actually makes this bike really nice at higher speeds. On the Yamaha, you could easily do highway work for hours at a time. It had great wind protection. That little bit of lean into the bars helped you lean into the wind and really made the bike long distance comfortable at high speeds. Being a traditional UJM, while this Suzuki is probably more comfortable below about 55 miles an hour, above that speed you really get significant wind blast. This isn't a huge deal though, because riders who wanted to do more touring on the GS1100E could simply add a windshield, some sort of wind protection that would allow them to do all-day touring on the bike. Spec-wise, when we talk about the horsepower on these two bikes, the Yamaha has a clear advantage. It has about a 20 horsepower advantage over the GS1100E, and it also has a significant torque advantage over the GS1100E. I have a feeling that those torque numbers are really going to give the Yamaha the advantage in our 40 to 80 roll-on contest, but we'll ride the bikes, we'll test them, and we'll see what the results show. All right, enough talk. What are these bikes like out on the open road? What are they like to ride back to back? I'm going to gear up, I'll bring the camera along, let's find out together. Let's ride.
I am currently riding Yamaha's mighty 1986 FJ1200, and I am riding this back-to-back with Suzuki's 1983 GS1100E. Now in '83, the GS1100E was arguably the best all-around leader bike that money could buy. But with the dawn of the next year, there were a lot of new players in the game, including the FJ1100 from Yamaha and the Ninja 900 from Kawasaki. This Yamaha definitely has a feel of a sport bike, and the Suzuki has the feel of a more standard style bike. And so when you're hitting the corners, this bike rolls into corners more smoothly, it's more stable at speed, it's got that little bit of sport bike tuck to it, and it just makes the speed effortless. The wind protection on this Yamaha also makes it an ideal highway cruiser, and you certainly would have to add some wind protection to the Suzuki to make it more capable out on the open road. Suspension on both of these bikes is plush. It's a little bit sportier on this Yamaha. It's a little bit more well controlled, and again, this feels more like a sport bike. This feels more focused, but focused in a good way. The instrumentation on this bike is shockingly modern. It's got a big tack in the middle, it's got a big fuel gauge, a clock, and the big speedometer. And it definitely doesn't feel like I'm on a vintage bike. In the braking department, this Yamaha definitely has an advantage over the Suzuki. Whereas the Suzuki has the single piston calipers, this bike has the dual piston calipers, both front and back. It also has vented disc rotors, which was kind of a fad. The suspension on this bike is adjustable in the front for rebound damping, and it's also adjustable for spring preload. this bike is smoother through the handlebars than the Suzuki is. The clutch pulls easier. The seating position on both bikes is comfortable, but I would give the nod to this Yamaha as well. And that little bit of tuck definitely helps at highway speeds. One of the things I notice on this FJ is that I get a significant amount of engine heat on a warm day. And it's mostly on my knees and kind of under my thighs where I feel the engine heat. This would be actually a nice thing on a cool day, and I anticipate it being pretty nice as we get into the fall riding season. But I definitely get more engine heat than I do on my other standard style air-cooled muscle cruisers and sport bikes of the early 80s. The suspension is plush and well controlled. Transitions smoothly into the corners. And I have to watch myself on a bike like this because it just makes it very easy to go very quickly. Cruising down through at just over 60 miles an hour. I'm revving right around 4,000 RPM. There's a little bit of a buzz through the handlebars from the four-cylinder motor, but it's not bad. This would not be fatiguing to ride. It's a nice, comfortable place to put on lots of miles. I am currently riding Suzuki's mighty GS1100E, and this bike was king of the sport bikes back in 1983. It was arguably the best all-around sport bike you could buy. It had an awesome motor. It had just tremendously good mid-range on it and top end. This bike was king of the quick back in the day. And I'm riding this bike back-to-back with Yamaha's 1986 FJ1200. And right off the bat, I'm noticing I've got a much roomier seating position on this bike. I'm getting less engine heat. But I'm also getting more wind as I sit more upright in the wind blast, and this bike just does not have the fairing like the FJ does. But mid-range power, both of these bikes are just fearsome. They accelerate hard, really from any RPM. They're not peaky motors. And you just, when you want it, all you have to do is roll it on. Both of these bikes are capable of generating big time speed very, very quickly. Handling wise, I can tell that this bike is running narrower tires. It has a different turn-in feel. Both of these bikes have big, comfortable seats. They both have very good instrumentation on them. One thing I like about the Suzuki is it does have a gear indicator, and that's just a nice feature. I've upgraded the brake lines to Spiegler steel braided units on this GS1100E. And they function much better than the stock units did. I've got a fairly wide handlebar setup on this GS1100E, and so in lower speed corners it is actually fairly nimble, and I have good control over the bike. And I would say this actually might have a little bit of an advantage at the lower speed stuff. But once you get into the higher speed stuff, the FJ definitely pulls ahead in the comfort department due to the wind protection and the stability in high-speed sweepers. Both of these bikes are really quick, 0 to 100 miles an hour. Very entertaining to ride, and they both have such nice power from low RPM. You really don't need to rev them all the way to the moon. To me, this GS1100E is really the pinnacle of the standard style sport bike. It's a bike that you could really do any type of riding on, and it'll do it well with a windshield and bags. You could do touring on it. It's smooth, it's comfortable, it's roomy. But by 1984, the riding was really on the wall, and specialization had become the name of the game. And when you get on that FJ1200, it feels like a sport bike. It has that tuck, it has that power, and it just wants to rip it up, and it makes the higher speeds so effortless. And whereas I really start to feel the speeds above about 65 miles an hour on this standard style bike, I'm up in the wind blast, that FJ just begs to go faster. Oh man, still capable and still fun. The transmissions on both of these bikes are just buttery smooth. You never feel like you're going to miss a gear or that it's going to pop out of gear. Very, very nice on both of these bikes.
Man, what a lot of fun. It is so cool to be able to ride these classic big bore motorcycles back to back, to get to experience really what are pieces of history, and to experience them in the context of one another, and to really see how the technology and the performance of these superbikes evolved so quickly over the space of just a couple of years in the mid-80s. While Suzuki's GS1100E was arguably the pinnacle of the standard style sport bike, it really represented the end of an era. With the advent of the fully fared, purpose-built sport bikes, the standard style sport bike was no more. Thankfully, the standard style motorcycle has made a comeback, and there are lots of really nice standard style motorcycles currently in the marketplace. But for a long time, it seemed that they were dead. On lower speed roads and tighter back roads, this GS1100E is still a formidable performer, and it turns into corners very easily. I like the narrower, taller wheels in real road riding situations, especially on the rural roads where you have gravel on the roads or debris. The taller wheels are less likely to slide out or wash out in those conditions. The steel braided brake lines I've added to the GS1100E really improve the braking performance, and it's surprising how competent this motorcycle is even today. Given its awesome mid-range and its impressive top-end power, this bike is still a force to be reckoned with on a tight back road. Once we get into the higher speed stuff and sweepers, this FJ really has an advantage. It has an advantage at highway speeds. It offers much better wind protection. You feel like you're enclosed in the cockpit. Both of these bikes have a very plush ride, very well controlled, and they are still very pleasant places to be. With a little bit of wind protection on the Suzuki, either of these bikes would be a capable cross-country touring bike if you wanted to do that. Both of these bikes have the 5-speed transmissions, and at highway speeds, both of them feel like it would be nice to have a 6th gear. But the speed limit was 55 miles an hour when these were designed, and they are geared accordingly. On a warm day, the engine heat coming off of this Yamaha can really cook your lower legs and the back of your thighs, and that's a drawback. The Suzuki's a much cooler place to ride. But on a cool fall day or temperatures below 70 degrees, the warmth coming off of the engine is actually a nice thing, and it can extend your riding season into the colder weather. In all-out performance, this Yamaha is the faster bike. It also has measurably more mid-range power, and it pretty much smoked the GS1100E in the 40 to 80 Top Gear roll-on contest. I was really surprised, and this isn't something that's evident when you drive these bikes back to back. It's not really evident from the seat of the pants feel on these bikes. This Yamaha always feels relaxed. It never feels like it's in a terrible hurry, but it generates speed effortlessly and quickly and efficiently. The Yamaha is more stable at speed than the Suzuki. The front end doesn't dive as much under braking, and in stock form, the front brakes on this Yamaha are significantly better than the front brakes on the Suzuki. Even though the Yamaha has the 16-inch wheels in the front and in the back, I didn't notice any oddness in the handling. It handles nicely and predictably in all the riding situations I've been in with it so far. Comfort-wise, both of these bikes are all-day comfortable. I fit a little bit better on the GS1100E because I'm tall. I'm 6 foot 4 inches tall, and so I have more leg room on the GS1100E. It's also a little bit of a reach to the bars, and I just find the whole cockpit layout very roomy, and I like that. Shorter riders will probably fit the FJ a little bit better. For me, the foot pegs are a little bit too forward and a little bit too high, and I have to shift my position and my posture around to be comfortable for more than half an hour. Picking a winner here honestly comes down to your preference. If you like a standard style motorcycle, a more upright seating position, a bike that lets you experience the elements a little bit more, man, the Suzuki is hard to beat. It has that slightly aggressive edge to the engine. It makes you want to be a little bit of a hooligan, and it puts a smile on my face, man, every time I ride it. Likewise, I really enjoy riding this Yamaha. It is so smooth and so under-stressed and easy to go fast on, and almost sneaky fast, that it's just a really nice bike to rack up the miles on. On the sales floor, the fully fared sport bikes were the way of the future, and the manufacturers went to more hardcore, sharper focused sport bikes for the next 30+ years. Well, I'd love to know what you guys think. If there are any Suzuki GS1100E fans out there, or Yamaha FJ1200 fans out there, please let me know in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.